Fat loss has become very confusing and frustrating for a lot of people, to no fault of their own. In fact, it's to the fault of all the contradicting information out there on the internet. Different people telling you to do this, different people telling you to do that, different people telling you to focus on the minute details, and different people completely ignoring the basics and what actually helps you get fat loss results. Well, in today's video, I'm going to walk you through the whole fat loss process in quick time to show you exactly how you're going to get the fat loss results you're after and what you need to focus on. Don't worry, we'll keep this dead simple. Let's go. Do you want to drop fat? I'm assuming the answer is yes, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. First thing we need to focus on, are you controlling your food intake? Now, if the answer is no, this is what we need to do first. The reason being, you need to be in a calorie deficit to drop body fat, which means you need to be taking in less food than you are expending. So, a big part of that equation is our energy input, our food intake. So we have to be controlling it because we need to be able to measure it and be consistent with it. Once we get those things down, we can then adjust the amount of food we're taking in to help us put ourselves into this calorie deficit. So if we're not doing this, we need to find ways to do that. Now this will come down to you as an individual, your preferences. There's many different ways to do it. I'm going to walk you through a few examples. You could track calories. You could do a food journal. You could focus on portion sizes. Whatever works for you, find a way to control your intake. Once we've done that, we can move on. Next focus, are you eating enough protein? Now the reason why protein is the next focus is for two reasons. One, fat loss is about reducing body fat, obviously, but retaining muscle mass. That's the difference between fat loss and weight loss. Weight loss is you lose weight from anywhere. That can include muscle mass. Fat loss is not that. Protein is going to help us retain muscle mass, but it's also going to help us keep us feel full for longer. If we can manage hunger better, we're going to be able to control our intake better. So protein has two benefits. Now, if we're not eating enough, I'm going to walk you through how much we need to eat. We want to aim between 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. So, for example, if you weighed 150 pounds, just as an example, you'd probably want to aim from anywhere from 120 grams to 180 grams of protein per day. Just to make sure it's straightforward, you would just take your weight in pounds, you times it by 0.8, times it by 1.2 to get this range. Now, you will be perfectly fine hitting this lower number. So I would advise starting here. If you're hitting this lower number or close to that lower number, you will likely be fine in terms of retention of muscle mass. However, as you go on through this fat loss, if hunger gets worse, which it might very well do, or as you get leaner, you might want to start bumping this protein up, not necessarily towards the higher end, you might not need to get there, but just as a range, you might want to start pushing it up. So we're now consuming enough protein. Next step, are you weight training or resistance training? Now, the main reason for this is not for calorie expenditure. No, it is for the retention of muscle mass again. So if you're going through this fat loss journey, you want to make sure you're holding as much muscle mass as possible, which is going to be important if you're bothered about your body shape at the end of this and you've got an idea of how you want to look. You have to weight train. If you're not weight training, I would aim for 3 times a week as a minimum. If you want to do more, go for it. Again, this can be resistance training too. So if you don't want to go to the gym or you can't go to the gym, but you can do some sort of body weight movements at home, that will also help. But obviously, if you want to get the most out of it, I would recommend going to a gym. Next, are we controlling our output, our energy expenditure? So we spoke about the calorie deficit, taking in less calories than we are expending. We focused on controlling our intake. Now we've got to bump up our expenditure. Weight training, getting into a routine will help with burning extra calories, but the amount of calories you burn on a daily basis or a weekly basis from training isn't actually that high. So here I'm going to focus on our daily activity. Best way to think about this is just how active you are day to day without focusing or worrying about training. So for example, steps. How much do you walk? Do you stand most of the day rather than sitting? These are the sort of things I want you to think about. If we're not controlling our daily output, what are we going to do? We're going to measure the amount of steps that we do in a day, how much of the day we're walking or standing. So you can track your steps, see where your steps are at right now, and then increase them by maybe 1,000 to 2,000 a day just to bump up your expenditure. If you're not tracking your steps, then maybe just sort of have a rough idea in terms of the amount of time you actually spend actively walking or standing up. And then again, if you can, maybe increase that by 10-20 minutes a day. But now we're controlling and increasing our expenditure. We move on to the next step. Do you play sport? Is the next step. This is very simple. Why do I ask if you play sport? If you play sport, that is going to help bump up your expenditure, and you're then actively doing some form of cardio. Now, cardio is not a magical fat burning form of exercise like a lot of people say it is. It is great for general health, and it can help with fat loss just because of our expenditure increasing. So if you're playing sport, fantastic. If you're not playing sport, then I would probably look at maybe adding in some cardio into your training routine. So maybe look at doing cardio once or twice a week. That's going to take us to essentially our yes, and we can move on. Now, just a quick point to mention here. If you are dropping body fat at this point, before the sport question, you might not need to do sport or add cardio in just yet. So if we're dropping body fat at this point, which we're going to come on to in terms of how to measure it, you might not need to worry about this. This is something you can maybe add later down the line if you need to increase the size of that deficit to get the rate of fat loss back up to where you want it, because the rate of fat loss will likely slow down as time goes on. Next question, are you getting good sleep? Now, the reason why sleep is important is because it will actually play a role in all of this. It will play a role in all of these things. For example, if your sleep is poor, it can lead to actually increased hunger signals and therefore increased food intake, which is going to make it harder to control our food intake. It can lead to obviously lower energy levels and worse performance. So therefore, our training, our sport, our cardio, our daily activity, that might take a hit. Poor sleep can actually mean you lose more weight through muscle mass than compared to when you get good sleep. So when you get good sleep, it's been shown that it can actually lead to more retention of muscle mass and greater fat loss than in comparison to poor sleep. So sleep can really make a difference in all of this. So if we're not getting good sleep, we need to focus on doing so. How do we do that? Try and relax a good couple of hours before bed. Try and eliminate blue light. So blue light is stuff from like phones, computers. Try and cut off work if you can a good couple of hours before bed. The best you can relax, reduce blue light, artificial light, the good chance you're going to be of improving your sleep. Try and also keep sleep times, wake times consistent. Now, if we're doing that, we're essentially doing all the big focuses, all the big rocks for getting a fat loss response. The only thing left to do is to talk about how we're measuring our progress. So, do you measure your progress, and how do you measure your progress? Let's keep this really simple. To measure fat loss progress, I would use multiple measurements. A lot of people just use their weight. There's nothing wrong with using weight, but I would use multiple measurements. So one, I would use weight, and I would weigh yourself every single day. You then take an average of your weight across the week. So take every single day, add every day up, divide by 7. That's your average. Compare your average from 1 week to the previous week. That's going to give you a better idea of how your weight is moving. Don't just take it once a week. Take pictures. Pictures are actually going to be the best form of measurement. Why? Because you can physically see what's happening. I would maybe redo pictures every month to get a good idea, to see how things are changing. You'll be able to physically see body fat reducing, you getting leaner. I would also measure your performance in the gym. So track what you're lifting, the reps that you're hitting. You don't want to see that regressing. You don't want to see that going backwards. If that's going backwards, then we're maybe in too big of a deficit, and it's not a great sign for retention of muscle mass. So if your progress in the gym is maintaining or increasing, which would be perfect, that's a very, very good sign. And then the last thing I would do is just take note of how you're feeling. Obviously, when you're in a deficit, you're going to be hungry to some degree. Your energy is probably going to take a bit of a hit. You might be a bit more tired, a bit more moody. It's natural. But if those things are getting heightened and getting very bad, then that's a sign to maybe pull back a little bit to reduce the size of that deficit a touch. Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully this is straightforward. There's a few moving parts here, yes, but take it one at a time, go through this, tick them off. Now, if you do want help with all of this, I do have a free fat loss blueprint which covers how much food you should be eating, how to control it, your protein intake. It covers energy expenditure in terms of steps, cardio. It even has weight training programs in there to help you with that, and it talks through how to measure your progress. It basically has all of this in one document. If you do want that, grab it in the link in the description below, okay? And you can use that to help you. If you did find this video helpful, please drop a like because it helps me. And if you haven't subscribed, do go ahead and do so you can keep up to date with all these videos that are going to help you and your fat loss fitness goals. All right, see you on the next one.